Yes, so we have gone through the whole chapter. Krishna has talked about modes, the symptoms, the results, what happens at death, what's the destination, and so forth. Now, Arjun is going to ask a question to Krishna. In the 21st verse, he's going to ask that he's going to ask about a person who has achieved, who has transcended these modes. Right? So Arjun is going to ask that. But before that, we did up to 19 in the last section. So today we'll start with the verse 20. Today, let's see what the 20 is more like a wrap up of the section Krishna was speaking. So let's see. 19, we did 20. When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So this is an interesting way. So now Krishna is highlighting it that the miseries are born with this body. Right? In the 5th chapter, in the 22nd verse, we were told, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga, dukkha yoneya evate. Samsparshaja. Sparsha, as we know in Sanskrit, Hindi, it means touch. The moment we touch this material energy, dukkha yoneya, it brings misery to us. Right? So unless we don't touch it, the material nature will sit there. Will sit like that for eternity. But the moment we touch it, that's where the miseries are born. And when we as a living entity are able to transcend this association that we have with this material world, we become free from birth, death, old age, and distresses, and then you can enjoy nectar even in this life. Prabhupada is using the word nectar because Krishna has brought out Amritam. Where's that? Amritam. So Prabhupada has translated that as nectar, right? So Amrit word also means nectar. It can mean delicious. Krishna here means eternal by the word Amrit. Krishna means that. Concept is that Amrit means immortality, right? How does one attain immortality? By realizing one's eternal nature. Uh, Sometimes people say when you go to Swarga, you attain immortality. No, that's not it. You just attain a long life. Right? Here, the word Amrit, which is being talked about, is beyond death. So that's something to keep in mind. So, Amritam Ashnute. Right. So this phrase is an interest. This is a very not a very common, but it's been used quite often, uh, even in the Nectar of Instruction. Ishopanishad. We will read next. This phrase will come. Amritashnate. It was in second chapter also. I think it was there. Uh, yeah. So many places we'll see this phrase Amritam Ashnate. So, so what makes us living entities take pleasure, seek pleasure in material things? Is the illusion. And the illusion is created on me by the material forces known as modes. And as we discussed in the first, when we started this chapter, it affects our perception. The example of three men sitting in a bus and looking outside to the beautiful forest. And then it also affects the way we react to a situation. Three men stuck in a fire in a theater. What do? So, how do we react and how we perceive? That's how this illusion is created. Krishna here is saying that those who transcend the modes go beyond the miseries of material existence. Right? Krishna has given a very categorical designation to this world. We know Dukhalyam Ashashvatam came in the 8th chapter, 14th verse. Mamupetya Punarjanma Dukhalyam Ashashvatam. So, it's Dukhalyam Ashashvatam because there is always change. Right? There's always, everything is always changing. Right? And things can happen abruptly. They can just change. Right? So one way to interact with this world is being prepared about it. not to be overly concerned with the ways things should be, but dealing with them as they are, not trying to change things according to ourselves. Okay? Because that'll never happen. Material nature is not under my control. But when I keep on trying to change things according to myself, that's what misery keeps coming into me. So I should just accept them as they are and deal with them as they are. When my mind is constantly pushed by urges, it is bound, right? But when we deliberately engage our mind in rising above those urges, we realize we are not this body, but we have a higher spiritual goal, and that makes my mind free. As Prabhupada translates in the verse, second chapter, there's a verse, right? Regulative principles of freedom. So when we regulate our mind, it makes us free. So everything we do is really based on our desires. For example, sometimes people say, oh, I don't have time to chant. It's not about time. It's more about taste. We would figure out everything if we really want to do it. We always figure out time for it. So we all seek enjoyments according to our conditioning. And when we get knowledge and association, we can upgrade our conception of happiness. Right? Yeah, that's the thought being brought up here. So, a devotee was asking me earlier this week that, there is these four distresses. These things are there, right? Birth, death, old age, and disease. It's always there. But the super soul also comes with us. But the super soul doesn't go through all these challenges. The super soul doesn't go through the misery of birth, death, old age, and disease. And neither do I as a living entity. But I believe, or I an illusion to think that I'm going through these miseries because I am thinking this body is me. If for a minute I could detach myself from this body, all these pains will disappear. Right? I heard a senior devotee once say that for a self-realized soul, changing bodies is very much like as if you're, he said, what was the word he used? Shawl. Like we all wear shawl. I don't know what you call that in English, but shawl, right? In winters, you wrap a shawl around yourself, around your top part of your body. And sometimes it just falls off, right? Like you have it on your shoulder and it just slip off. And you won't even notice it. So that's the way self-realized soul see the change in bodies. They move from one body to another. Oh my God, it's just like my my shawl just dropped off my shoulder. Yeah, they don't even think about it. So that's a good way of looking at it. That how do self-realized souls look at these miseries? Yeah. Prabhupada was leaving his body, and what was he doing? What was Prabhupada doing when he was leaving his body?
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10.
Yes, Canto 10. He was translating it. So it was I suppose Shastras tell us that when we are dying, it's like 1,000 scorpions stinging us at the same time. That's the kind of pain we are going through. And in that pain, Prabhupada is translating 10th Canto, 14th chapter. You all must have read that chapter. It's so clear. It's so clear. So a person who's leaving his body is so clear because he has fully realized that he's not this body. So that's the state. That's the nectarian state that a person can achieve and while being within this body. While being within this body. Okay, so now let's see what questions Arjun asks. Kair linges trin gunan etan atito bhavati prabhu kim achara kathams chaitams trin gunan ativartate. So there are three questions that Arjun is asking to, where'd that go? To Krishna. Okay. Kerlinges, that's the first question. So it's regarding a person who has transcended these modes. So all those three questions are related to that person. What are the symptoms of that person? Krishna answers that in 22 and 23. Then Arjuna asks, Kim Achara, what is his behavior? There you go. What is his behavior? That's answered in verse 24 and 25. And then lastly, he asks, Katham Chaitam Strin Gunanati Vartate. How does he transcend the modes of nature? Answered in verse 26. This is the most important verse, 26. Because 23, 22 to 25 still is technical. Yeah, fine. It's very soothing to my intellect. It's like flowers to my intellect. But to my heart that is looking for a very practical answer, this doesn't suit, doesn't fit well. So the verse answer in 26 is what just transcends all of those modes and everything. So Krishna will answer that in 26th verse. So these three questions have been asked. Okay. What are the characteristics? How do they behave and how can one transcend? So Prabhupada says in the purport that Arjun's questions are very appropriate. Now, they are appropriate because he is seriously endeavoring to understand. Though when somebody asks a lot of questions, you can know that person is trying to understand seriously. So Krishna then will answer by describing the internal characteristics, external characteristics. And lastly, we'll talk about bhakti. Mam vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sa guna samatitaitan brahma bhuvaya kalpate. The 26th verse, he'll talk of bhakti. I will go into those details when we reach the 26th verse. But that's the most important part. Okay, so now the Lord answers it. Again, so 22, 23, 24, 25, these are four verses that Prabhupada has put together. As I have mentioned to all of you, you might see in some version of Bhagavad Gita that these verses have been put separately, labeled separately. But here, Prabhupada is putting all these verses together, four of them, because they're talking about the same thing. So let's see what these are. So I've highlighted the sections. So the yellow section is answering the first question of Arjun, which was about symptoms. Okay. And then the blue part is about the behavior of that person who has transcended the modes. So let's see. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they're present, or long for them when they disappear, who's unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. Right? So Krishna has used, where's that? Prakasha, Pravrittim, and Moham. If you may recall, these three words were used earlier on in this chapter to describe goodness, this Prakasha, Pravrittim, attachment, that is passion, and Moham. Moham is a characteristic of illusion. So now Krishna is telling that the person is beyond these three modes. Okay, which you would expect, yes. So uh, so when any of these three modes attack that person does not resent, and when it goes, he doesn't worry about it. What it means is that, you know, sometimes what may happen is a devotee is, where a elevated devotee might see that the devotee might forget a verse he or she is trying to quote. The devotee doesn't start criticizing himself or herself and say, "Oh my God, I forgot this verse," and or just start lamenting or thinking that, "Oh, what will people think of me? I forgot a verse, and I'm supposedly this senior devotee practicing for 40 years and so forth." No, the devotee just let it pass through. Right? Similarly, uh, sometimes things come. Prabhupada, um, there was a lot of fight around the Juhu temple land way back in the 1970s. But Prabhupada, he wanted that land for sure, yes, because he had promised Radha Ras Bihari that I will get this temple for you. But then he was not attached to it. He was also ready that in case this land doesn't come, I'm fine. What can I do? So there was a sense of detachment. So when a self-realized soul is beyond all these three modes, so it doesn't affect him. Right? And then udasinavad asina asaktateshu karma. This phrase also comes in the 9th chapter, 9.9 earlier on. Yes. So uh, so just as I was mentioning earlier, just like the super soul, if the soul also becomes detached, then this comes to this position of udasinavad asina. Yes, Achyut Radhe Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just
Hare Krishna.
wanted to know what is meant by he who does not hate elimination. Especially the word elimination is meant for what purpose here?
Knowledge.
Illumination was used for um,
Knowledge, Prabhu.
the mode of goodness. Yes, illumination. So there was this verse, right? I think it was the 11th verse where he said, uh, "The 9 gates are illuminated." Right? We discussed that, right? That was 11th verse. Let me go and check which verse was that. So this verse, the word illumination has been regularly used in this chapter to relate to a mode of goodness. So Krishna and Prabhupada, both of them are continuing that thought process. But let's see which verse was that. I can highlight that and quickly go over that. 11, if I remember. Well, 11. Yes. Prakasha upjayate. So Prakasha is the quality of illumination, develops, illuminated by knowledge. Okay. One can see things in the right position, hear things in the right position, and taste things in the right position. So illumined here means the person is self-realized. Illuminated means the person is um, effulgent with the knowledge that he or she has received, right? And if you look at it in a common like knowledge also, when there is no prakasha, there is no illumination, I cannot see things clearly. So when there is prakash of gyan, of knowledge, when there is illumination of knowledge, then I'm able to see better. So
Prabhu, is it a form of enlightenment? I would assume.
form of enlightenment, you said?
Yes, right.
Yes, that's right. Yes, enlightenment. So a person who's in a mode of goodness, you can say is in enlightenment. Yeah. So we are able to perceive consequences. Right? So for that, illumination is important. Without illumination, there will be delusion. When our senses are illumined, we will know how to act, how not to act. Right? So yeah, so that's what it means, Ashudra and Mataji. Did it help?
Yes, Prabhu, it's now clear because I was confused why, in what context elimination word was used. Hate
Yeah.
elimination, that means not to hate someone who is knowledgeable or is enlightened. So now I understand it better. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so he does not hate illumination, means he's not averse to knowledge either. But then he's neither attached to that knowledge also. Right? That's also to understand. A devotee, he's not dependent on the knowledge that he has gained from Shastras to progress in bhakti. A pure devotee is fully dependent on Krishna. Right? Prabhupada, in his poem, Markine Bhagavad Dharma, which he wrote when he came on the Jaladuta, the last paragraph he writes, oh, let's pull it up. It's a very good verse. We should all know that poem which Prabhupada wrote. And if you can, Markine Bhagavad Dharma. Markine Bhagavad Dharma. Markine means America. Dharma. Okay, here it is. I found it. And I just wanted to show you the last verse of that Markine Bhagavad Dharma, what Prabhupada says. He says, Bhakti nai, Veda nai, Name khub dharo, Bhakti Vedanta naam, ebe sarthak karo. So Prabhupada is praying to Krishna. He's saying, Krishna, Bhakti naam, I have no devotion. Veda nai, I have no knowledge. Naam, but I have a strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. What a beautiful position to be in. You know, I don't have anything except strong faith in the name of Krishna. But now what people have designated me as Bhakti Vedanta. And now, if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhakti Vedanta. So this is a person who has transcended the modes of nature. Okay. And
Yeah,
because he's
absolutely. Very beautifully said. I mean,
yes, right.
it should be our motto too,
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. If I become puffed up based on my knowledge, how I can quote Shastra, I know verses, this and that, what am I going to do with this? Who cares? But look at what Prabhupada is telling us. The whole philosophy of this ISKCON or Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada has summed it up. We have no devotion. I have no knowledge. Only thing I need is strong faith in the name of Krishna. And then everything will be revealed to me. And that's what Krishna is saying in the verse we were reading just now. That a self-realized soul, he or she, he's not worried about knowledge coming from it, or he's not worried about the attachment, delusion. Things will keep coming. It's like an ocean, and his boat is rock solid. No wave of whatever size can move him, and not because of his knowledge that he has gained. It's because he has full faith in the holy name of Krishna. That's what holds his boat strong in the middle of the ocean, which is full of waves. So yes, that was the meaning of illumination. Prabhupada
Thank
wrote,
you, brother.
you're welcome, Mati. Prabhupada wrote 2 poems, Markine Bhagavad Dharma, and there was this, I don't know what the name is, but it's a beautiful poem if you want to hear to it. Agni Dev Prabhu sang it. Krishna Tabe Punya Habe Bhai. Prabhupada wrote it also. So also a beautiful poem. So yeah, you can read it at your leisure. So yeah, so the first qualities, as I have highlighted in the yellow, answer the first question, symptoms. So these are the symptoms of that person. He's unwavering, he's undisturbed, he's neutral, he or she is transcendental, he or she knows that only the modes are working, it's not me. And so that's the qualities of a person who is in a mode of are the symptoms who have transcended this whole process. So um, when the word neutral is used, so that person becomes detached. a detached observer. The concept of mindfulness is very famous nowadays. We all are told to observe our thoughts. But how will we observe our thoughts if we are not even in the mode of goodness? That's the problem with today's all these books on motivation and so forth. They give us beautiful ideas, and I appreciate that. But nobody connects it back to Krishna. Or not even Krishna, connected back to God, connected back to something that is absolute. If you connect something to something that is relative, everything becomes relative. And everything can change then. The principles that anybody gives in a book, if it is connected to something relative, those principles will also become relative now and sometime. So we have to always connect it back to Krishna. It's only that faith in Krishna can make all these other philosophies valuable and worthwhile. So the whole concept of mindfulness can only be cultivated if somebody reaches the mode of goodness, right? We can train ourselves in a mode of goodness. In a mode of passion, we cannot train ourselves. We are too excited, right? So once we become avasthite, the word Krishna is using is avasthite, we don't get shaken up. And it's in general, it's not easy to observe thoughts, but obviously there are many practical ways. I know many people write journals. If you like to write journal, that's a good way. You can write down and next day probably think about it. Why did I react in this way? You can contemplate a bit. That is what Krishna is telling us here. Even if my mindset is such that I cannot observe at this moment, but you can observe, think about it later on. If you have a journal written up, so that's it. So if I know that my mind eludes me, I can recognize that. I can observe my mind, how it's fooling me, right? So it acts as an enemy many a times. We cannot, and then the thing is that we are stuck with our mind. We cannot just wish it away, right? But we can surely become more careful, critical, observing, and then move forward in our bhakti. We can become internal observers. Even not, and I can understand, while doing the action, we might not be able to be very observant and so forth, but in retrospection, we can do it. We can think, oh, I took this decision. What was this appropriate? Was it in the right consciousness? And then we can work on it. Obviously, not to get into a mode of guilt. We can always work on it. So we always have the capacity to be conscious of our thoughts, conscious of our consciousness. Yeah. So that was the first question. Now let's look at the next part. So that's the internal, what that person is doing. What are the external symptoms that person is showing? He looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and piece of gold with an equal eye. He's equal toward the desirable and undesirable, who's steady. So when somebody praises me or blames me, honors me, I become steady. Okay. And then I have friends and enemies externally. How does that person treat them? And then there are so many material activities outside. How do I interact with them? So those things are the external part, right? So how do we infer from the behavior? So favorable, unfavorable, ninda, stuti, right? So man, apaman. So now it's like, okay, there's praise and blame, honor and dishonor, right? And these four words, they sound similar, right? And like, for example, praise and honor, they sound similar. Blame and dishonor, they both sound similar. But there's a slight technicality there to understand. When we are thinking about praise and blame, that is something what others are doing to us, right? But then when we are talking about honor and dishonor, that is what we are perceiving. I feel dishonored when somebody blames me. Get the difference? Okay. So praise and blame is coming from outside. Others are doing to us. Honor and dishonor is what I am perceiving about it. Right? So such a person is gunatita. Guna atita means transcendent. Right? So the common denominator of all these is that the person is to be equipoised. Right? Equipoised because the person sees that all this duality is created by material nature. Somebody who's criticizing us today can become our very close friend tomorrow. Right? It's not that the person has changed. It's just that the modes are working differently now. Right? So it's a if being stuck in this modes is a very painful thing. It's not easy to be happy as a human. There is so much false idea out there that I can be happy by adding more things in my life or being in the right external situation. But no, that doesn't work. Happiness comes from, as Krishna is telling us, it's coming from integrity. When I'm able to act according to my plan, right? I'm not regularly dictated by my senses, by my mind. I'm not forced to do things which I know are not good for me. Right? Just like Dhritarashtra, everybody told him, "Your son is a demoniac person. Get rid of him." And he knew that that's right, but he could never do it. So, uh, so he was not able to act. So that's called cognitive dissonance. Um, Cognitive dissonance. Yeah, cognitive dissonance. Yes, I mean, I'm doing the wrong thing even though I know what the right thing is. Right. But then a person who has transcended his modes, the person can develop habits that have been suggested to him or her by high-minded sources like Krishna. And then I start feeling spiritual integrity. Right? I come to a state and where I understand that I'm whole. I don't need anything else. I don't need to prove myself to anyone else. I just have to be an exemplary person for my own self. And that brings a sense of peace that makes me equipoised. And the beautiful part is that even Krishna doesn't judge us if we are not able to conquer our senses. In the 11th canto, there is a verse where Krishna is talking to Uddhava, and Krishna tells him, "Badhyamano api mad bhakto," right? Vishayet ajitendriya. That and he calls him Praya Pragalbhaya Bhakta. Praya Pragalbhaya Bhakta Vishaya Nabhibhuyate. It's 11th canto. I'll just quickly show you that verse. It's a beautiful verse that should give us a lot of inspiration, because many people have asked me, "Oh, transcending the modes is so hard," and I always ask them, Krishna never asked you to transcend the modes. Yeah, he's asking us to control our mind. He's asking us to do that, but he's not asking us to fully transcend the modes and reach there. He says that only I can help you with it. As we all know from the verse. Which verse is that? I highlighted that. Where Krishna says, "Oh, I can help you with transcending these modes." Anybody remembers?
Is it 7:14, Prabhu?
Yes, 7:14. Thank you.
Devi is right.
Yeah. Daivi esha gunamai mam maya duratte. Mam eva ye prapadyante maya metam taranti. Daivi esha gunamai. Daivi. He's saying that this is divine energy, my divine energy. And if I, as a living entity, start thinking that I will overcome these modes of nature, then technically I become more than God, because it's His divine energy and I have been able to transcend it. But then Krishna says, "Mameva ye prapadyante maya mitam taranti." That if you become my devotee, I'll take care of it. Then it will seem as if the person has overcome the modes of nature, but it's not out of his or her own achievement. Yes, Krishna likes to give credit to his devotees, for sure. So, but then it's Krishna's mercy that makes it happen. And I was showing you a verse, 11th chapter, 14th verse, which will confirm that what I'm mentioning to you, that we don't have to necessarily kill ourselves. Oh, I can't transcend these modes and just die in here, or I will never do bhakti. So this is the verse, this for records, Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 14, 18. Krishna speaking to Uddhava. My dear Uddhava, if my devotee has not fully conquered his senses, he may be harassed by material desires, but because of his unflinching devotion for me, he will not be defeated by sense gratification. All Krishna is asking, unflinching devotion of me. What is that? Abhyavicharini. No. Oh no, Abhyavicharini is the verse we are doing it in. So, and as I was you saying the word pragalbhaya bhaktya. So the word pragalbhaya bhaktya. Pragalbhaya means effective and strong. Or in other terms, as we have been hearing, strict, serious, and sincere. And that's according to our capacity. There's no strict standard to it. Or this is what strict, serious, and sincere. This is the way bhakti is done. No. Bhakti is dynamic. It's going to differ from person to person. But if I say, no, this is what bhakti means. Either you are a bhakta or you're not a bhakta. No, Krishna doesn't do that. Sometimes devotees do that, but Krishna doesn't do that. He's telling us here. So if you are sometimes very demotivated that, oh, I cannot, these modes are harassing me a lot, read a couple of verses. Read this one and then read 11th canto, 20th chapter, verse 27. There also Krishna says something similar. Okay, going back to where our chapter verses. Okay, so yes, so this is that the modes have been transcended. So an example of the Pragalbhya Bhakta is Gajendra. He was fully into sense gratification, but he immediately took shelter of the Lord. No other shelter. That is Pragalbhaya Bhakti. Not defeated means what Krishna is saying, right? In this verse that I was just talking to you, Krishna is saying that he will not be defeated by sense gratification. What does Krishna mean by that? That person doesn't give up his or her practice and go to material life. No. The meaning of this verse that I just showed you is, if my bhakti remains, if strong bhakti remains, then we will definitely conquer. It is not a problem to be harassed by sense gratification. Problem is when I give up bhakti and become unfavorable towards bhakti and Bhagavan because I'm being harassed by sense gratification. I start thinking, oh my God, I've been doing chanting for 10 years now and I'm still hit by sense gratification. That means Krishna does not exist. And bloop. In earlier ISKCON days, when any devotee would fall down, they would say, blooped. He blooped. So when somebody devotee said to Prabhupada, and where's the devotee Prabhupada? He said, Prabhupada, he blooped. Prabhupada said, what does that mean? So that person fell off. So sense gratification has truly defeated us when we turn away from Krishna. Krishna doesn't judge us if a person is being harassed by sense gratification. So when a person understands that, it doesn't give up bhakti till the last moment of his life, he has not been defeated by these modes of nature. He's a Pragalbha Bhakta. And Grihastha Ashram is a very educational part of one's life. And we can integrate the principles of bhakti in our real life circumstances and become Pragalbha Bhaktas. Well, we already are Pragalbha Bhaktas. That's good. So yes, so that's the thought here. And here Prabhupada is giving the essence that we transfer the consciousness to Krishna, and then our sense gratification automatically stops. It's not like I stop my sense gratification and then I become Krishna conscious. No, that's another problem many devotees I've seen have. They think that I will only become a devotee once I have fully become pure. No, it's not. It doesn't work that way. If that was the concept, nobody would have been initiated ever. The concept of initiation itself means that, okay, now you are serious, so now get initiated on this path. And then when many years you put in effort and then your spiritual master sees that, okay, this person is seriously progressing, then he gives us the mantra diksha, which is the Gayatri mantra. That's the second initiation in ISKCON. So yeah, don't get confused that, oh, I have to become pure and then only I can get initiated, or then only I'll become a devotee. No. The moment you made a serious decision of coming to bhakti, you're already a devotee. Ripe mango, raw mango, you're still a mango. Okay. So this was a section, and now, okay, the most important verse of the chapter. Mam chayo abhicharena bhakti yogena sevate brahma saguna samakittaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So just to highlight one thing, this is the only place where Krishna uses the phrase bhakti yoga. He's used the word bhakti many places, yoga many places. But the dual compound word bhakti yoga is the only place here. So this makes this verse a very special verse. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the mode of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Once again, Krishna highlighting the same concept that we were discussing earlier. Unfailing in all circumstances doesn't mean that you are perfect all the time. It just means that you always bring yourself back to where you were, despite however times I may fail. I make a very conscious effort that I will not fail, and I might fail because I am not perfect. But then I stand up, dust myself, and go back again. My bhakti process. I will be considered failure if I don't go back. But I'm not considered a failure for for uh, for failing. Okay, that Krishna is okay with. Even 9th chapter he says that, right? That Kaunteya Pratijani Name Bhaktya Pranashyati. Right? That don't my devotee never perishes. Might fail but never perishes. So, but then what is the requirement Krishna is asking? Full devotional service. What has Prabhupada given us? How to do devotional service. You follow the 4 regulative principles. You do your chanting, okay, and engage your mind in, according to the principles. You're good. Will become unfailing in all circumstances. Sagunatamatittaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So practice bhakti to whatever capacity we can. Just by doing that, we can move upwards and come to a level of practicing bhakti purely. We may not be able to transcend the modes all the times, right? If I fracture my arm, it's going to take some time to recuperate, right? First, I slowly start moving it. Or first, there's a lot of that. What do you call that? They put a plaster on top, right? And then slowly, then after some time, they'll remove the plaster. They'll put me some bandages or something. So I'll be able to start moving my hand slowly. So, so we use whatever strength we have. That's the important part. So don't give up bhakti just because you feel that the modes are torturing us. They will torture us. Krishna doesn't have any problem with that, so we also should not have any problem with that. Obviously, we are trying to control them to the best of our capacity, but don't become overwhelmed with that thought that I cannot control my senses. Oh my God, I'm useless. Oh my God, I'm not worthy to do bhakti. Don't let yourself get into that self-pity victim mode. Krishna is accepting us as we are because he loves us. Prabhupada is putting here that Krishna activities are known as Bhakti Yoga, always active for Krishna. And then he tells us that this includes not only Krishna, but his different plenary expansions such as Ram and Narayana. He has innumerable expansions. One who is engaged in service of any of the forms of Krishna or his plenary expansion is considered to be transcendently situated. The important part to understand here is don't get confused that, oh, Krishna Prabhupada is promoting Narayana worship or something. He's saying, but understand that he's presenting all of them as plenary expansions of Krishna. As long as we understand the relationship to Krishna, worshipping these others will also give us the same result. You're talking about these, Prabhupada has even said in one of his purport that if you hear about a pure devotee, that will also purify your heart. As long as you understand the connection of the pure devotee to Krishna. So please be careful about that. Prabhupada is not saying that, you can forget Krishna and then pray to Ram and Narayana. You can pray to Ram and Narayana, but as long as you understand them as the plenary expansions of Krishna. Okay, the last verse. Brahmano. Yes, please.
Prabhuji, it says right in the shloka, the translation that it comes to the level of Brahman. So what does Brahman signify here? All knowledgeable, wise? Because I remember sometime back you had mentioned, right? Brahman has different meanings at different places. So
Yeah.
what exactly it signifies here, the Brahman? All wise, knowledgeable? Or... Root of goodness here.
Yeah, that can be, yes. Let's see what Prabhupada is saying. Level to the until Prabhupada talks about it somewhere in the purport. Yes, thus the qualification is to become Brahman or freed from all material contamination. It is said in the Vedic literature, Brahmeva san Brahmapi eti. One can attain the supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. This means that one must qualitatively become one with Brahman. By attaining Brahman does not lose his eternal Brahman identity as an individual soul. Let's see what Prabhupada is saying earlier than that. Yes, so it's primarily freed from all material contamination. So you can say mode of goodness. So you have transcended. So you can even think this way that you can transcend the mode of goodness even, but then not go to bhakti. Okay. So you don't want to be there, but then yes, you are no more harassed by the modes of nature. But if you're not going to take yourself beyond that, it's not a good position to be in. But here, what that means is, I was giving you another way of looking at it, but who's engages in full devotional service. So the word Brahman then here means it's talking about bhakti yoga then. Okay? So Prabhupada is talking that the living entity in the spiritual position is as good as gold, as good as Krishna in quality. The difference of individuality continues, otherwise there would be no question of bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga means that the Lord is there, the devotee is there, and the activity of exchange. So here Prabhupada is highlighting that the platform of Brahman is where we understand what our spiritual position is, and we become as good as Krishna in quality, not quantity. So that's the concept of bhakti yoga that that Krishna is talking about, right? As Brahman here.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Right? Here's Prabhupada is saying, one who surrenders unto Krishna at once surmounts the influence of the modes of natural nature. So, another way you can put this sentence as, one who surrenders unto Krishna, he or she becomes a Brahman. He reaches the Brahman platform. Because he or she has automatically transcended the modes of nature. So he's come to the Brahman platform. Right? But then what Krishna does in the last verse, interestingly, is he brings out the concept of Brahman also. Because here he's saying Brahman, but then people might think Brahman as different, as something else also. So let's see the last verse. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Right? So yes, you have the word Brahman can also means that you have transcended the modes of nature, right? But then if you have not, as I was saying earlier, if you have not connected to Bhakti Yoga, then it doesn't have any value. What are you going to do? Oh, fine, yeah, you control your senses good enough that now things don't disturb you. But what are you going to do with that? There is no use of it. So what Krishna is explaining now, that you have to understand that the position of that Brahman, that impersonal Brahman that people achieve, where they have transcended the modes and they just hang in suspension with no activity and no reciprocation, it's of not much use. But as long as you understand that I am the basis of that impersonal Brahman, and that's subordinate to me, then you can connect with me and become a bhakti yogi. Otherwise, it's not of much value. So here in the last verse, Krishna has even further delineated the concept of Brahman for us. And that what does it mean? So let's look at it in more detail, this verse. So going to I'll show you from here. The verse is also important. So Brahmano hi pratishtha. Okay. So Krishna is saying, I'm the source of Brahman. Amritasya vyagasya cha. So Brahman is Amrita, and Avyaya is indestructible and imperishable. So that's the quality of Brahman. Shashvatasya cha dharmasya. It is eternal. Sukhayasi kantikasya cha. It's a platform of ultimate happiness. Right? So the most important line in this verse is this first one. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the basis of that impersonal Brahman. Right? So pratishtha means foundation. So I'm the foundation of that Brahman. So the Brahman is supported by me. That means Brahman emanates from me, Krishna is saying. Right? So as mentioned, it's also mentioned in the Brahma Samhita. Yasya prabha prabhavito jagatanda koti yat shakti rasti jagatanda chaya evanta. Tad Brahma Nishkalam Anantam Ashisha Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamham Bhajami. Right? So, so that Brahman, which is Nishkalam, is that which is transcendental, that's coming from Govinda, is coming out of Supreme Lord. And that's the platform of ultimate happiness. Right? So, so going back to it, so ultimately, we are all meant to attain the platform of Bhagavan, right? We have to connect to Krishna. So not just Brahman. So here but because the Brahman is Pratishtha, expounded on Krishna. Right? So the Brahman, the impersonal Brahman that many people achieve, which is going back to the last verse, that a Brahman person, if you just disconnect that Brahman from Bhakti Yoga for a minute, that Brahman can be transcended the mode of nature. But then it's a very there's no reciprocation there, right? What are we going to do there, right? So then it's not a good position to be in. So the Brahman happiness is the happiness of negation, happiness from disintegration from material problems, staying away from material problems. But there is no reciprocation, right? So Krishna is putting Brahman and the word Aham in the same verse. So he's giving a relationship between the two. He's saying that I'm superior to Brahman. Right? So going back to the last verse, Brahman can be a state of where we have completely moved away from material problems. But if there is no Bhakti Yoga, there will be no reciprocation and I'll fall down again to that platform. Right? So when I reach the spiritual platform, I have to also act on that platform. Right? And when we become purified, we will realize our qualitative sameness to Krishna. So, and I think this, I'll finish this chapter. Parapavniyati, I know your hand was raised. Just give me a minute. I want to finish this thought and then I'll come back to you. There was something Prabhupada says in here which I wanted to highlight. Where was that? Yes. The living entity, although Brahman by nature, has a desire to lord over the material world, and due to this, he falls down. In his constitutional position, a living entity is above the material nature, three modes of material nature. But association with material nature entangles him in the different modes of material nature. Passion, goodness, passion, ignorance. Due to the association of these three modes, his desire to dominate the material world is there. By engagement in devotional service, in full Krishna consciousness, he is immediately situated in the transcendental position, and his unlawful desire to control material nature is removed. So that's the challenge we have. That originally I'm Brahman by nature. What kind of a Brahman? Brahman who knows that he's subordinate to Bhakti Yoga, he's subordinate to Krishna. But so, and that means that I have transcended the modes out with my Bhakti. But then when I have desires to control this world, I fall down from that Brahman nature. Okay. So that was one thing. Okay, here was also another thing I wanted to highlight. This part. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that although a person may rise to the stage of impersonal Brahman, without going further with no information of Supreme Person, his intelligence is not perfectly clear. Therefore, in spite of being raised to the Brahman platform, there is a chance of falling down if one is not engaged in devotional service of the Lord. Yes. So in this chapter, Krishna describes the process of devotional service and says that beyond Brahman, I am there and I am the support of this Brahman, right? And also the best way to disentangle from the modes is the devotional services towards the Lord. Right? So I have to go beyond, and as Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, Jivera Swarupoy, Krishnera Nityadas. Right? Once I reach this spiritual platform, I also act there, right? And I take shelter of Krishna, I take shelter of devotional service. Okay, thank you. Yes, Parampavani, your question or comment.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
The question I have is like um uh when a person is not practicing bhakti yoga and it's transcendenting the three modes of material nature. He is then situated in the Brahman position as a part of Brahma Jyoti emanating from Krishna. Is that right, Prabhuji?
Yes, that's correct.
And they can fall from the that position because they are not they are not in the reciprocal relationship with Krishna. Right,
Yes.
Prabhuji?
Yes, that's correct. There is no reciprocation there, so they can fall down because
Gotcha.
there is no reciprocation.
And so the connected question is that like like how they fall, is there like if like can the Brahman also be like getting into the modes different? They should not be contaminated by the modes, right? So how they fall, like if the desire, or is there any desire of enjoying being independent of Krishna, from being independent from Krishna, like
Yeah,
that's
those desires come back. Yes, and many times people or devote or sages who have been practicing, they fall down and they come back to the material world and they get engaged in material activities. It might not be like commonly like highly grossly materialistic, but then it might be even materialism at a level of goodness. They'll open hospitals and probably those kind of things they'll start doing because they didn't find that reciprocation by being in that platform. So they have to come back to the material world and look for that reciprocation. It could be in a mode of goodness, but still it's one of the modes that they have got themselves entangled in again.
Gotcha, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So being a devotee and taking pleasure in that is far more than being a Brahmanandi, taking pleasure in the Brahman. Right? So we don't want to do that. Okay, so this was the last verse. I'm not going to start the 15th chapter today. We'll start that later. Any more thoughts here?